Hey, welcome to Chris and Rick Talk Guitars. Today we're going to talk about P-90 pickups,
Yeehaw!
one of our favorite topics. Chris is a big P-90 aficionado. I came to the game late, as I always do, man. I'm a day late and a dollar short, but I appreciate them. I dig them. Chris, when were you first kind of made aware of P-90 pickups consciously, right? I mean, I think you and I both heard guitar sounds that were cool, but I never really attributed it to P-90s per se. But
Right. I don't know that it's so much the pickups themselves as much as the guitars that they came attached to originally. Like, Les Paul Juniors, ES-335, whatever they are, the 335 that had P-90s, the 330, ES-330 guitars. I just like the guitars that they came attached to, and I like the characteristics that they have. So yeah, my entry into P-90s was just being kind of enamored with Les Paul Specials and Juniors.
did you see or hear players that were playing those guitars that you were drawn to, or
probably Mick Ralph's in Mott the Hoople was probably the first one that I dug. And off the top of my head, and the dude in Ted Nugent's band for the first few records, Derek St. Holmes.
Oh.
And on the back of, I think, that first Ted Nugent record, there's a picture of him, and he has a Les Paul Jr. And I was always, into that guitar because of that. And I think Brad Whitford from Aerosmith, I had a poster where he was playing one. So I was attracted to those at the time. They were like considered Gibson's student guitar. I thought they looked really cool. And the sounds that they made turned out to be as cool as they looked.
Yeah. I was always, I was such a humbucker guy when I was younger. I just, and I saw the old Les Pauls with the P-90s and thought they were just like antiquated and low output, which is good, come to find out. But, I don't know. It was weird. For the longest time, I wasn't really drawn to those pickups. But then when I put two and two together, where I started to connect the dots between sounds I heard, guitar sounds I heard, and I liked, I noticed they were playing P-90s, right? Whether it was a Junior or whatever it may have been, or even an old Les Paul for that matter. I started to, the light went off over my head and started to think, okay, well, these P-90s, there must be something to these pickups, because it's basically the sound of rock and roll, really. Because that, before the advent of the humbucker, there were single coil pickups, right? Whether it was like a Strat pickup or a soap bar pickup.
Right. Yeah. They evolved out of the steel guitars, like the lap steels and things like that.
Yeah.
So, it's just a pickup, like a single coil pickup. And I think, they just kind of hit it on the head with the right amount of output, which gives it its characteristics when, screwed into mahogany, or in the case of a 330 into the, laminated maple top, or I don't know what those guitars are, but I haven't had that much experience with like slapping a P-90 into other guitars. Like, people will build a Telecaster and put a P-90 in there.
Right.
And I don't know that would be what I would associate with the P-90 sound, because it's so much associated for me with a Gibson style, a glued neck, mahogany based guitar is going to sound different no matter what pickup is in there. One thing that's interesting about the P-90 that I did not know until I read a book on pickups, some nerdy ass book on pickups, is that when Gibson developed the humbucking pickup, they were completely satisfied with the sound of the P-90. So when they hired the dude to build the humbucker pickup, they say, we want this sound, but we want it to cancel hum. And I've noticed for myself that I can see a lot of similarities between a humbucker and a P-90 in like the same style guitar. Like I've played Juniors where they've been modified for humbuckers before. And then to me, they sound like a Junior. There's definitely a little bit difference that they don't hum, for one. Yeah. And there's a little bit more, it compresses a little bit different because of the humbucking qualities, but you can tell it's the same. I mean, it's the same basic vibe. So I think they did a really good job wanting to keep, the fundamental sound of that pickup and, just put it in a humbucking format. So that was one thing that I never realized. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is there's a lot of like USA budget guitars from like Harmony and, K and these other companies that have Gibson P-13 pickups in them, which are the precursor to the P-90. It was a pickup called, and I got to make sure this is right, the P-13.
Did it have the little square pole pieces or whatever? Those little...
It looks somewhat like a P-90 pickup, but it has like a ridge that goes across the entire middle of the pickup, and there's screws on it. Those are cool pickups, and I had a Harmony with those in them, and it sounded pretty good. I don't think it's quite as mid-rangey as a P-90, but you'll find like lots of USA student guitars with those pickups because Gibson supplied a lot of those makers with the P-13 pickups. So it evolved out of that, you had the Charlie Christian was like the first pickup that Gibson did, and then they went to the P-13 and then to the P-90. A little bit of pickup history.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that you really associate the P-90 with the guitar itself, and that's an interesting thing. I think you're right. That's the way I associate it too, but I definitely do associate the P-90s, the pickup itself, with a more mid-rangey sound. But now that you mention it, I'm thinking about Badfinger, and they played, like I saw a bunch of videos of them playing like SGs with humbuckers through Fender amps, I think, or something, but they got kind of a mid-rangey sound. But I think one of those guys was playing a P-90 too, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe one of the guys was playing a Junior or something. But
I think I ran into an article a while back by Roger Mayer talking about pickups. And he said it was his opinion that people put way too much stock in a pickup's role in the tone of a guitar. And that more than anything, it's like the inductance, which is the amount of turns around a pickup that, determines the output. And the output is what gives the pickup its sound. And I've experienced this a number of times where I've replaced a pickup in a guitar that was like let's say a humbucking pickup that was like a medium range humbucking pickup with another like boutique or upscale medium range humbucker pickup, and I could hardly tell any difference at all. It's not like this big jump of like this tone shaping thing that a lot of people claim that it is. And I kind of the reasons he gave for him feeling that way, I kind of like align with, because it was my experience, and it makes sense. I mean, it's a coil, and you can experience this if you move the pickup up or down. You can change the tone considerably. I mean, because the more output a pickup has, the more rolled off high it's going to have, and you take the output down a little bit, and it's going to treble, more trebly. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a ton of research on pickups, but I do know that, like, I talked about that later model Explorer I have that had the high output pickups in it that I thought just sounded like shit. It just sounded terrible. There was no warmth to them, nothing. And then I put those Lawler Imperials in, and I noticed a marked difference in warmth and tone. But you're right. I mean, basically, it's just an amplifier for the guitar's sound. So, you know what I mean? It's just going to amplify the guitar's sound. So, I mean, I guess it could just, like anything else, like if it was too high output, it would just maybe, I mean, the equivalent of distorting the sound or shaping it in a way that's unpleasant, right?
Or it gets kind of muddy. The more output you have, the more mud it gets, because it just rolls off the high end and kind of saturates things. I mean, my Junior came with a pickup that was related to the P-90, but it's not a P-90. It's called an H-90, which was a humbucking P-90. And the H-90, there's also the P-100, which is like a humbucking P-90 equivalent, which has two coils that are wound in parallel or something like that to reduce hum. The H-90 pickup is wound in series. So a lot of people will take the P100s and say, I don't like the way they sound because they don't sound like a P90, and they'll just snip the bottom coil. So it effectively becomes a P90 because it's two, identical coils hooked up in, parallel, and they'll make it into a P90. With the H90, if you want to make the H90 into a P90, you have to disconnect a wire because it's wound in series. So you have to disconnect one and rehook it up around the other coil, and then you effectively have a P90 pickup, which is what I did on mine. And where I was going with this, it's a winded way of saying it. You mentioned that you didn't like the pickup Explorer. My guess is that it had too much output. And that's what was my experience with the H100 too. It had so much output that it was just really muddy sounding. I found myself constantly reaching for the tone control because it just felt and sounded like the tone was rolled off.
Yeah.
It was terrible. I mean, it's so funny because a lot of people really like the P90, but I guess there's a bunch of people that can't hang with the amount of, hum that they generate,
right.
Because Gibson has tried so many times to make, a P90 and get rid of the noise. So it's like to me, it almost seems like they're trying to make a P90 for people who don't like P90s. So it just seems kind of pointless because they haven't succeeded there might be fans of the P100 and fans of the H90, but as an avid fan of the P90, they fall really short. Both of those fall really short in giving me what, I want a P90 to sound like.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think there are a lot of different examples of where a company makes a pickup or a guitar for people that don't like that guitar or pickup. We've run across that before, but yeah, but I love P90s. Again, like I put Lawler P90s in my Gold Top Deluxe instead of the mini humbuckers. Have you played that guitar plugged in? Did you play that?
I did. It was down at the Space once where we had that band together, and I used it for a rehearsal or two.
Did you dig
it was
it?
great.
Oh, cool.
Well, my question to you on that would be like, so we have mini humbuckers, the Gibson mini humbuckers that went in the deluxes or whatnot. And those are interesting pickups because those don't sound like a regular humbucker. They're smaller coils and they have a more narrow field. So they definitely have their own unique characteristic going on. What was once you put those P90s in compared to the original mini humbuckers, what did you experience as far as change in tone?
So the tone change I noticed was warmth. The P90 is a little warmer. And it's weird because I've talked about this before too, but I know a dude that has an old 70 something, like 72 Deluxe Gold Top, and the mini humbuckers in that thing sound really warm and cool and dynamic. And my Deluxe is way later, like a 07 or something. And they're newer mini humbuckers. I don't, who knows what the differences are, but I played it. It sounds good. Those mini humbuckers sound good, but I wasn't like blown away by the sound as I remembered being blown away by the mini humbuckers that I'd heard in that other guitar. And then I was also just kind of becoming a little more enamored or interested in P90s. So I thought, well, since it's an easy swap, I'll try these P90s in the Gold Top. And I think that's the one thing I noticed is it warmed up a lot with the Lawler P90s instead of the mini humbuckers.
Specifically, did you notice there was more treble with the mini humbuckers? Did it kind of tame some of the treble? Or
yes.
You said warmth, so to me that kind of suggests
maybe
a little more mid-range, maybe a little rolling off of the highs.
Exactly. Yeah.
I haven't played mini humbuckers for years and years and years, but I never really dug them that much. But I think just about anything can sound good with the right, once you find the essence of the guitar and dig in, because I've heard people play those.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed is they have a really unique way of, like, when you really push them, they kind of have this weird like crying effect that is pretty cool. Like, it's just, I don't know how to explain it other than that. It just sounds like really kind of a vintage, like bluesy cry sound to them that you don't really, I think full-size humbuckers just compress a little bit more, so it's a little softer, but they're cool pickups. I never owned a guitar with them in it though. And I think I do prefer like either a full-size humbucker or a P90 too.
Yeah. And like I said, my association with them is just kind of through that one guitar, and it sounded so cool. As I recall anyway. And because like you said too, I really haven't heard a lot of mini humbucker guitars in my day or played a bunch, but my association with that guitar is it's a cool guitar, the older one, the Les Paul Deluxe. But but I'm digging the P90s in the Gold Top I have, and I think it made that guitar more attractive to me, to play.
Right. No, I agree. That's a really cool guitar. I like it actually. If you could just send it over.
I'll have it couriered over to West Seattle through Portland, now that you guys are kind of sequestered to your own. Well, Talking about P90s, we can't talk about P90s without giving a nod to Leslie West, RIP.
Oh
We
yeah, all
lost,
right.
yeah, we've lost a couple guitar players recently, and I think it'd be fun to just talk about him as a guitar player and his association with P90s and because like I wasn't really hip to him when I was younger, but man, as I got older, I really respected his playing, his restraint, his note choice. Everything everybody says about him is true. It's like he's one of the tastiest players that there was. I mean, and I kind of dig him a lot. I think he's kind of in the same vein as Clapton in terms of that kind of style of playing, but I like his playing better because to me he sounded a little more urgent, or like he was kind of taking more chances. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, he had a very cool, raw sound. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I forget his story of on how he stumbled upon the Junior, and he influenced a lot of people. Like, I mean, he
Oh,
put
totally.
Juniors in a lot of hands of other guitar players that we know. I mean, to me, I liked Mott the Hoople first, and I loved their guitar sound. It was big, fat, and warm. And that was a direct result of Leslie West putting a Junior in their hands, and they go, no, you got to try these guitars. They're
Yeah.
great. And so, every time Mott the Hoople toured after that, they would scour the pawn shops and buy all the Juniors and music melody makers too. They liked those
Awesome.
too, but they were like turned a lot of people on to the Les Paul Junior. I did, I got a Mountain record when I was like just a kid, probably maybe 13 years old, and I tried to like it, but it was something I just wasn't ready for it. I just didn't get it. There's something about it that was kind of almost creepy to me, like that stuff. Kind of, I don't know what it was exactly. So I like put it away and said, no, I don't really like this. And then many years later, I revisited and like, oh hell yes, this is
Yeah.
great. And I even went out and he was in a band in New York in the '60s called the Vagrants. So I went out and got hit that record, one of the Vagrants records, and I really like that. It's just great, like classic psychedelic pop from the '60s.
That's
And I don't
awesome.
know what he was playing in that, but it certainly wasn't a Junior.
Well, I think I saw or I read some piece. He was associated with Waddy Wachtel back in New York.
Really?
He was.
Oh yeah, he was
I
like,
think Wachtel was his guitar teacher or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, and somehow that's how he acquired a Junior through
That's
Wachtel,
right.
Waddy Wachtel, and and he dug it right away. And another key part to his sound is that amp in quotes that he played through. Right, he ordered a Marshall, but he got a Sun PA system in the mail, and it sounds
That happened.
bitchin'. It sounds amazing. So he's got this just unique combination of gear, a student guitar essentially with a P90 in it, and this PA that's normally used for vocals in a band, and he plugs into this damn thing. And I think it had a master volume on it or something like that. Yeah, but yeah, and it resulted in this just unique, fat, cool, toneful sound that he's been known for. It's kind of cool. I love that. I love the fact that his gear, especially back then, was considered kind of weird and unique.
It was, yeah. And his vibrato that I will mention, which is really great too. You can tell when you listen to that how much of the Junior is responsible for him developing that vibrato. Junior, with its wraparound bridge, has that really nice kind of almost rubbery kind of feel to it. And it lends itself really well to the type of vibrato that he developed. And I'm pretty sure that kind of helped in his style development. But I can definitely hear it when I listen to him.
I think you're right. I think there's a certain slinkiness to the guitar with that wraparound bridge that you don't get with a stop tail piece. Yeah. But I always dug that. I always saw the picture of him playing a V though with that P90 in the bridge pickup, and I dug that because I love Vs. But I just thought that was cool too to see him just plop a P90 in a V and play it.
Yeah, and Mick Ralphs from Mott the Hoople again, he had a really cool one pickup Firebird white that had a single P90 in the bridge, and I've always coveted that guitar. That would be great because again, both of those guitars, the V and the Explorer, they're all mahogany.
Yeah.
So screw a P90 on there, and you're going to have the same sound, only different because Firebird has more mahogany, and V has maybe less or the same because it's shape different. So I don't know. how much mahogany, but yeah, you're going to have the same fundamental tone, but whatever those differences in those instruments would add to it.
Yeah, but I think that's cool that you mentioned that because it's all mahogany and a P90. And I think there is something to that combination. The warmth of the mahogany and the mid-rangey sound of the P90 is a great combination, I think.
Right. Or dropping a P90 in a melody maker is never a bad thing. I mean, I've heard that before, and that's a really good combination. It's just like a Junior Light. It's a little bit skinnier.
Yeah.
A little thinner Junior. So yeah, that's a really good.
SGs with the P90s in them, or like Did you ever have those SGs with the P90s in them, or
no, the specials, or the SG Juniors? No, those are great though too. I mean, that you mentioned influences, and that was another influence for me was Paul Westerberg, who used Les Paul Juniors, this SG Junior, and the regular Les Paul Junior, and that was like just classic rock and roll tone.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go wrong, but they'll do a lot more too. That's what I like about them. They're very versatile. I mean, playing like roots-based, country tinged music sounds really good on them because they'll twang, but they're just a little more mid-rangey than like a Telecaster, but they'll still twang nice, and the sound is not bad at all.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they are versatile pickups, and I think they're it is the sound of rock and roll. I mean, that's what was in guitars before the advent of the patent pending humbucker, or they're all single coil pickups. What are the single coil pickups like in melody makers? Are those just super low output, like single coil pickups?
They are. They're not. I mean, there's not a lot going on in those. I mean, they'll sound clean. You can get some interesting sound out of them, but they are a little anemic. I haven't heard one in a long, long time. Yeah. But if that would probably be something that I would swap out if I got. I mean, I'd love to have a melody maker. It's a really cool guitar. But what I would probably do is, without even thinking, is probably get a replacement pickguard assembly with a P90 in it, which I think Lawler sells. So you just take the original pickguard assembly, including the pickup, and stick it in the case and pop one of those in, and you have a pretty great sound. Melody makers with humbuckers, we all know, sound really good too. That's the thing about Gibson, mahogany-based guitars is, I mean, you can swap. I mean, I don't know why you would, but if you wanted to, and a lot of people did this in the 70s, is, take out a P90 and stick a humbucker in, and it's like, it's not a world of difference in the guitar. I mean, this fundamental essence of the guitar, the cool essence of the guitar is still there, but it just, it just kind of takes on slightly different characteristics. I mean, there was a 50s Junior not too long ago down at a shop that somebody years and years ago, probably in the 70s, stuck a humbucker in, and that was a great guitar. Yeah. I mean, I'd rather have the P90 in it, but, it was already done. And it wasn't a bad guitar at all. It was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember that guitar. I think you showed it to me.
Yeah,
well, I think that's an interesting point, and I think that's mahogany as a guitar wood, electric guitar wood, I think is such a cool wood because I think it does carry over those characteristics we talk about, like warmth, mid-range, and it is kind of a forgiving wood with different pickups in it.
Yeah, that's why the Les Pauls, like the Les Paul standards or the deluxes or whatever, or the Pro, I guess was the one that came with P90s.
Oh yeah.
They definitely sound different than an SG or a Junior or a Flying V or an Explorer because they have that maple cap that adds like snap to it, a little bit of snap to it. But that's why, when you talk about P90 pickups, it's like a P90 behaves a certain way, and it depends on what you drop it into. It'll have the fundamental thing, but a lot of people like, I love P90s. I'm going to put one in my, my Bronco or my Telecaster or something. It's like, great. I mean, you'll have the characteristics of that pickup, but it's not going to sound like a Junior,
right?
Or how much of it is really the sound of the pickup, and how much of it is the sound of the guitar? I guess that's the question.
Ooh, that is the question. That's the survey question.
Let's talk about the noise for a second. I guess you can't really talk about the P90 without talking about the noise, because there's a lot of noise with a P90.
Yeah.
But it's really odd, and I want to see if you're the same way. Is the last thing I ever think about, probably for the last 15 years of playing guitar, is noise. I mean, even this is in the studio and whatnot. It's like it's almost second nature. Like if I have a Telecaster and I'm recording something, maybe it's a softer song, or I'm playing over like an acoustic track. I turn my guitar on and I just turn my body to where the buzz goes away and I play the part. And, you know, I
Yeah.
turn my volume down when I'm not playing, just
Yep.
instinctively. So, but there's, you know, forums, guitar forums all over the world, people saying, how do I get rid of this sound? You know, maybe someone that just came to, you know, single coils for the first time and they plug it in and, you know, they have something going on in their like electrical system, like a fluorescent light or something. They're like, what do you do? You know, if they've been playing humbuckers, it is kind of odd to hear that much noise, but I guess I'm so used to it that I don't even think about it.
Yeah, me too.
There's one club in Seattle that's really bad. It's the what is it? The High Dive.
Oh,
this club in Seattle that has like something going on, and that's really bad.
Yeah.
Like it's like even for me, it's really noticeable when you're getting ready to do sound check, you plug in and turn on, and you're like, what the hell is that? But even there, you know, I just okay. When I'm not playing, turn my volume down, and if I have my volume up and I'm not playing, find the way to turn to make it less noticeable. But.
Yeah, I'm the same way because I've played Strats and other single coil guitars throughout my playing history. And the same way, it's just a characteristic of that pickup and that guitar. It's like, so that's what I've done too, is just learned to, when I'm not playing, my guitar's, the volume's off, or I found a way, like you said, to turn where it's less noise or it's cut it off. But yeah, I mean, it's a characteristic of those single coil pickups that they're gonna be noisy and there's gonna be that hum, and that's the whole idea of the humbucker, right? So I think it is funny but we keep trying to, you know, alter that single coil or make it, tame it, as it were, right? Because we love the sound of the single coil. And
I'll take the hum and the tone that I get from the pickup over the no hum and the tone I get from this, you know, attempt to make it quiet. One thing, it's easy for me to tend to forget, though, in fairness, that, you know, I don't play high gain music at all. And I'm sure for like a P-90 in a high gain situation is probably something that I would be on a forum complaining about too, because it's probably pretty great. And in that situation, you know, you're probably better off with a humbucker if you want to really use. And the other thing is, like, especially with a lot of like old 50s and 60s Telecasters, people will complain about the squeal from, you know, the pickups can get kind of microphonic. And for me, it's like, that's not a problem. That's where the character of the pickup comes from. I can talk into this pickup and you can hear it through the amp.
Exactly.
And it actually adds to the tone. But again, if I were in a high gain situation, I would probably be complaining too. I mean, I guess if you're talking high gain, it's a different game. I mean, to get, you know, to have that much gain and volume on, I mean, I guess you have to choose a pickup that kind of will work with you in that situation, or you'll be driving yourself nuts.
Well, it kind of, the dude from Social Distortion uses P90s in he's got deluxe. He's a deluxe freak, but he rips out the mini humbuckers and puts P90s in there, and they play high gain rock and roll in it. I've seen them live a couple times too, and they fucking rock. I mean, I don't know. So I think it just gets down to your tolerance level, like you were saying. If you really, or you'll find ways. Maybe for all I know, on his board he has a noise gate or something. I don't know, but it sounded great live. I mean, you know, his P90 guitar he plays through, well, either Bassman heads or Marshalls, depending, but it sounded bitchin'.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So, I mean, P90s, love them.
Well, me too. So our parting words are, if you haven't played through P90s, through one of these guitars, you got to, because they're cool. It's a rock and roll experience. And you got to add that to your arsenal.
Play one today.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks.
Check us out on social media and keep up with us. Reach out to us. We love to hear from you guys. Ask questions. Mix it up. Chris, you got anything else?
No, just thanks again.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.